Greetings and salutations, Dark Shadows fans, and welcome to episode 5 of Collinsport After Dark. I thought maybe you'd like to see the behind the scenes of how things work here at the Nerve Center at the Collinsport Inn in the Chris Jennings Memorial Hotel Room. Here you see my printing machine here. I keep a lot of reference material on top of this for each production, including Craig Hamrick's collectibles book for Dark Shadows here. That's for this particular one. I've got all sorts of interesting things on the wall about Dark Shadows, and also, as you can see here, a lovely little 1967 calendar. Got it off eBay, pristine. Thought that was kind of nice to have on the wall. And souvenir of Bangor, Maine, my hometown. And then, of course, this poster from the 1875 view of Bangor. Quite a lovely little boom town back in its day. That's an old bar sign there that was in my home when I was growing up. My brother gave it to me. And over here, of course, the blue whale section. And you see my homemade blue whale sign up there. And then these two little fellows down here, well, they were made by a company called Burwood back in the 1970s. They're plastic, three-dimensional little wall hangings, and they represent the Collinsport Harbor, if you will. Over here, we've got on top of my bookshelf, we've got the dioramas with the werewolf and Barnabas Collins models. You can get up a little closer there. You can see that's Chris Jennings there. In the graveyard near the mausoleum, there's Barnabas over there. And then below that, lots of ephemera, magazines, books. And you can see there's also a Viewmaster set right there. 16 magazines. Oh, new copy of Our Shadowed Past. Just got that here last week. Whole bunch of Philadelphia Chewing Gum Company products there and collections, gum cards and the posters and such. Down below that, some bobbleheads and the complete collection of Dark Shadows DVDs, including all the specials. And below that, that's the entire set of Dark Shadows paperbacks. And we're going to talk a little bit about those Dark Shadows paperbacks here on episode 5 of Collinsport After Dark. Down here's an interesting item. You see it says Brittany Dussoir on that matchbook. That was the hangout for a lot of the Dark Shadows actors up on 9th Avenue, only about a block away from the Dark Shadows studio. And right next to that is Griswold Inn, which is, of course, the Collinsport Inn. And above that, an Orr Box matchbook cover, which was the department store where they got a lot of the modern fashions for the show. And that's Remy. He's my ever faithful watchdog, and he's on alert, as you can tell. Over here, we've got a nice advertisement there for the Dark Shadows soundtrack LP. And below that, a whole bunch of CDs, and also that is an original cassette tape of the Dark Shadows LP. Below that, got some books here, including Barnabas and Company and the Dark Shadows Daybook and Daybook Unbound. A couple of David Selby books here, including My Shadowed Past. And these here, well, these are the those acetate discs that I bought from Jeff Kenny, who gave me a lovely deal on them. And those were actually used on the show. We talked about those in an earlier episode. And down below here, 45s and LPs related to the show, including this little guy here. This group out of Allentown, Pennsylvania, back in 1968, did this little parody song called Barney Bus. You can imagine that's about Barnabas. You can find this by the Young Ideas on YouTube. You can actually hear it on YouTube. And then, of course, I've got an original copy of the Dark Shadows LP right here. And on the back of it, this is a Canadian copy, and it also has a negative image on it, which is fun. And let's see, I got some more of these Dark Shadows LPs, but I also have Ernest in Love. Louis Edmonds was in this musical at the Cherry Lane Theater back in 1960. It's quite a lovely little musical, quite a lot of fun. It's based on The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. And Les and Larry Elgin. Now, what's that got to do with Dark Shadows? Well, I'll tell you. Several of the songs on this album were used in the early jukebox sequences at the Blue Whale before they decided to only use Bob Cobert's music exclusively. So that's a lot of fun. Now, over here, something from my childhood. I used to like these Marx Best of the West figures here. They're action figures, about 12 inches tall. There's a nice old pillow down in Maine, where I'm from. And above that, we've got Dark Shadows Jigsaw Puzzle. This particular one is the graveyard one, showing Barnabas in the graveyard. And on top of that, of course, is the same style hat that was worn by Nicholas Blair. Over here, some period TV guides with articles and features on Dark Shadows. Behind that, the Dark Shadows Whitman game from 1968. I broke down and bought the snow globe here a few months back. I got a second Barnabas Collins model here, keeping watch over my version of the Petoffee box, and also my little candelabra with blue candles in it. And there's the Barnabas Collins game. A few other things you can see there. There's the lunch box. And over here, my facsimiles that you've seen in the background of several of my episodes of the slate on the right hand there, the VTR slate. And that represents the VTR slate of I believe the first episode where Barnabas shows up at Collinwood. And next to that on the left is the daily schedule, which was usually posted, and you can see it in several photographs from the era. I believe this was the 1968 schedule, and I just kind of made up my own versions of them. Up here is the farewell party calling card when Dark Shadows was canceled. That's a facsimile, obviously. And down here is a facsimile of an 1897 calendar, for obvious reasons. One of my favorite time periods on the show. And down here, well, there's my hat, B for Barnabas and all that. Anyway, let's get back to our little episode and start focusing on the Dark Shadows paperbacks. Got some fun stuff for you today.
Well, hello, friends and strangers, and welcome back to Collinsport After Dark, episode number 5. Now, I've been away for a while, up in Logan's Part, doing a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? You want to talk about a big old mountain to climb? That show is, if you're an actor. I highly recommend it. Very rewarding experience, but it was a lot of work, folks. And that's why I haven't been around for a couple of months. So it's good to be back with B for Barnabas here on my head. And today we're going to talk about the Paperback Library series of paperback books based on Dark Shadows. It includes 32 different novels by W.E.D. Dan Ross under the pseudonym of Marilyn Ross, which happened to be his wife's name. And so we'll go over those a bit. And there were also some bonus paperbacks that were put out by Paperback Library at that time, and we'll touch on those as well. Today we're going to go over not only a brief storyline, and for that I have to give credit to the Craig Hamrick Dark Shadows Collectibles book. There's some nice tiny little descriptions of the plots of each of those. We'll go over those with each book briefly, but the main thrust of this whole thing is going to be matching up all of the photo covers of the various books with the episodes in which they were taken. And on that topic, I also have some photographs that were not used, but were produced by the photographer that did the Paperback Library photographs. Most, if not all, were done on set during productions of particular episodes, so I can match those to the episodes. But anyway, these extra photographs were supplied by Dark Shadows fan Nick Caputo. And you can also see Nick talking to Penny Dreadful, aka Danielle, on episode 74 of her podcast, which is Tara at Collinwood. And also in the descriptions, I'm going to have a web address for Nick's blog spot, which features certain types of comic books and collectibles as well. So hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. So before we get started with our usual musical description display of all the visual items that I like to do, let's go ahead.
This is an ABC color presentation.
Welcome to Collinsport After Dark. With me, Alan Gallant. And a whole host of things that go bump in the night. So I guess the first thing to do is to initiate everyone, including those who know and those who don't, in what these Paperback Library books look like. First of all, the first 4 of them were originally issued with painted covers. And these were the ones that were written and published in the pre-Barnabas era of the show. So 1966, early 1967. The 5th one, which was written before Barnabas became big and doesn't really have anything to do with Barnabas, they decided to put a picture of Barnabas on the cover, sort of as a preamble to what was about to come. And then finally, the 6th volume, which was called Barnabas Collins, actually brought us into the popularized era of the show. Here's a caveat for you, though. It is a parallel universe. If anything, the first 4 or 5 books actually follow the flavor of the pre-Barnabas show much more closely than the post-Barnabas ones do follow the post-Barnabas aspects of the show. The author, Dan Ross, under the name Marilyn Ross, was not keeping himself penned in by the show, as it were. This has its pluses and its minuses. Some of the books are really good alternate universe stories, and some of them are kind of out there a little bit. But still, overall, it's a great parallel universe. And Dan Ross was not a great artiste in terms of writing. He was a pulp writer. He was very skilled at what he did, but he could produce work, 160-page book in about 2 to 3 weeks. He had a number of storyboards all set up, and he would use variations of those so that he could produce as much work as the Paperback Library Company was asking him to produce, which was quite a bit. 32 books were produced in about 6 years, and that's a lot of material. They were all about 160 pages. They were somewhat formulaic in terms of the storyboarding, but there was some interesting and creative stuff within that format, I guess I would say. And I give kudos to the late Dan Ross for his incredible output and for keeping fans of the show fired up about how things were going. So let us go ahead and we'll go through this video presentation of the various books, and including both covers of the first 4 books, because later they put photo covers on the first 4 books as well to capitalize on the Barnabas craze. So here we go. Cue the tacky elevator music, please. I hope you enjoyed that little pictorial tour through all of the Marilyn Ross books, plus some of the bonus ones. Just as a reminder, the first 32 books, beginning with Dark Shadows and ending with Barnabas Quentin and the Vampire Beauty at number 32. Those are all the Marilyn Ross books. There were some bonus books in the series as well, and these would include another Marilyn Ross book, which was the novelization of House of Dark Shadows. So that would be, we'll just call that 33 for right now. Also, which had nothing to do with the TV series except that it was endorsed as a Dark Shadows item, would be the Dark Shadows Book of Vampires and Werewolves, which is a bunch of short stories by other authors. Let's call that book number 34 in the Paperback Library series. There's no particular real order to this, of course, to the extra ones. We also had, which I got a copy of this years ago. This isn't the copy, but I get my original copy, which is long gone. I got through Scholastic Books when I was in grade school. And this is Barnabas Collins in a Funny Vein. It's the absolute worst jokes you've ever heard. They're all really groaners, but it's still kind of fun to look through. And I think that one was in 1969. And that was also a Paperback Library special. And this is probably the best, for me anyway, of all the Paperback Library specials. It's Barnabas Collins, a personal picture album. And it's got a lot of great photography in it that was done specifically for this book by a Paperback Library photographer. And speaking of Paperback Library photographers, we'll also have some special additional pictures that were not used for the album covers that were shot by the Paperback Library photographer on the sets at Studio 16 in New York during production of several different shows for use on the covers, and then later they chose certain ones and other ones they didn't. And these extra photos come from Nick Caputo, who was a Dark Shadows fan. He's also can be found on episode 74 of Terror at Collinwood, talking to Penny Dreadful, aka Danielle, about some stuff. And he also has a website, Blogspot website, that I will put in the descriptions so that you can go to that. And that features certain collectibles and comic books that he's interested in, among other things. And it's a real good little resource for those of you that are into collectibles and comic books. And I'll describe that further as we go before we end our episode today. Thank you very much again, Nick, for allowing us to use your pictures here. And I was happy to date them for you. And so I can date them for the rest of the fans here today as well. Another interesting thing before we go into the descriptions of the various books and their connections to certain episodes. There was a Dark Shadows Halloween party in 1968. And I've seen several photos from this Halloween party. They're very, very interesting. A section of this party was held on the set itself, and certain studio kids were allowed to come in and, drink soda pop and have some, snacks and so on. And they were given books. And I've seen photographic evidence of at least two of the books. And one of them was, of course, The Curse of Collinwood, which I think was the most up-to-date book in October of '68, right on the heels of this party. The first Barnabas Collins paperback, the one that actually featured Barnabas Collins in it, would be published. This one doesn't really feature Barnabas, but it was republished, another printing, if you will, after Barnabas became popular on the show. So they stuck a picture of Barnabas on the cover. Well, he's not really in the book, but he's coming anyway. This is number 5 in the series. Number 6 would be Barnabas Collins. So another book that was featured, I think, as one of the giveaways at that party was Victoria Winters. And it would have been this version, not the painted cover version, which also features a picture of Barnabas with Victoria on the cover, as opposed to just a painting of Victoria. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And right now I'm going to show you a little picture here, and you'll see where at least one of the kids, and I think several of the kids, got these books. And I think they might have had a choice of one of several. So let's take a look at that. So here is one of the celebrated Halloween parties that took place during the tenure of Dark Shadows. This is the 1968 one, which took place actually after the taping of episode 619, which was taped on October 31st, 1968. And here you see that we have a bunch of studio kids in there talking with and celebrating with Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins. And if you notice, down to the lower right-hand side, there's a young lady who is carrying a copy of the Victoria Winters book. Here's a close-up where you can actually see the Victoria of Victoria Winters on the photo cover version of the book. Here's some other pics from that party. It's mostly, it's on the studio floor, actually all of it is, and you see several of the stars of the show, including Lara Parker and Don Briscoe, and there's Don Briscoe in a nice shot there on the set. And here's a nice group shot coming up here with Lara and her first husband, Tom Parker. And that's Roger Davis and his soon-to-be wife, who was known as Ellen at the time, but later was known as Jacqueline Smith. And here's another great group shot. And if you look in the left-hand side, there's a young lady there holding one of the Paperback Library books and a photograph of Barnabas Collins. You can also see Marie Wallace and Don Briscoe and Humbert Estredo there. And all the way over to the right is Diane Paleota, who was the assistant to the producer at that time. And here you see her in one of the 16 magazines from April 1970, the 16 Spec. Well, I hope you like that little detour there. It is vaguely connected to the Paperback Library novels because they were given away at that particular party, and I thought you might like to see some of the fun stuff. As an added bit of minutia, I think they went to the local A&P store because the soda cans that are present in those full color group shots are Yukon soda. So that's a brand of the old A&P markets. So that was kind of fun. I'm a little OCD when it comes to that stuff, but there you go. All right, so there's one book that I didn't mention that appeared in that sort of musical compendium that I show at the beginning of most episodes on collectibles, and that's this one. It's the Dark Shadows cookbook. And oh boy, is this thing going for big bucks these days. I got a really good deal on it, as I am wont to do because I am very patient. I am the patient grasshopper. What happens with this thing is, this was put out by Ace Books in 1970, and it's got a bunch of goofy recipes, purportedly from various people on the show, or at least the characters on the show. My favorite's got to be Quentin's Karate Chops, just because it's silly. That cover has another picture of Quentin, who was extremely popular at the time, of course, that this was out as well. This was put out by Ace Books, though, not Paperback Library. Okay, so that's why it's sort of it's a tail ender, but it's still a paperback of that time. So I thought I'd just sort of include it here for your edification. Now, what I have here, I have all sorts of things that I've written down and pulled out in terms of the descriptions of the novels and the publishing dates of the first printings. Craig Hamrick's Dark Shadows Collectibles book. So I give him all credit. You're going to hear me reading from this book while you see the various books on your screen. So I give credit to that. In terms of the photographs and their origins, I actually have my own information that I've collected over the years. And I have a good deal of detail on that. And there are a number of books that came from the same episode. They sent photographers at various times, just like the gum card people did. And interestingly enough, episode 804 is used frequently. It's in 1897, of course, and it is used frequently as one of the photographer's favorite subjects for the Paperback Library covers. It was also used as a favorite for the Philadelphia Chewing Gum Company photographer when they did the posters, the giant pinups back in 1969. So they had to be on set at the same time, the same day. So hopefully they got along pretty well and they weren't fighting over things, because it looks like they took shots based on some of the same poses. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, I have the information about the photos here. And the descriptions and publishing dates from Craig Hamrick here again, and my own hand scratching here for all of the various origins of those photographs in terms of the episodes and so on. So hopefully this won't be too tedious for you, and you might learn a little something. This is the way it was done, folks. This is the way DCP, Dan Curtis Productions, this is the way that any of the merchandisers did it. They went and they took pictures that were going to be used on the various products, whether it happened to be, some of the comic book covers for Gold Key, or the Paperback Library, or the Philly Gum stuff, the cards and the posters, and the postcards as well, the Clinton postcards, which we'll go into later as well. So with all that, let's go ahead and get started. The series of 32 novels based upon characters created on the daytime Gothic television series Dark Shadows was produced between 1966 and 1972 and written by Dan Marilyn Ross, a well-known Canadian writer of Gothic romance novels. Although the books were only loosely based on the TV show, with the exception of the first run of 4 novels written before the Barnabas craze became a mega phenomenon, which had painted covers, the entire run of the books featured photos taken from the show. The majority of these photos focused on the relationship of Barnabas and Quentin, both in the past and present-day Collinwood. Other photos include solos of those 2 major characters, as well as Victoria Winters, on whom the earliest books in the series focus, and upon which covers she appears. The only others who were included in shots depicting either Barnabas, Quentin, or both were characters from the 1897 timeline. These were Edward Collins, Charity Trask, Charles Tate, and Jameson Collins. The general appearance of the Paperback Library Dark Shadows novels was as follows. The cover of each book was gold-colored, with an oval-shaped photograph dominating the center of the cover. The title of the book could be found in various locations within the photo area, and usually a brief description of the story was there as well. Sometimes the description was outside the oval and printed in black against the gold of the cover. Lettering within the photo was always either white, gold, or yellow, and the title was larger than other lettering. At the top of each of the novels read the announcement, "A Paperback Library Gothic," with a book symbol placed either to the left of the sentence or in the center between paperback and library. The cost of the book was found at the top of the cover as well, either to the left or right of the trademark sentence. The cost of the first 12 novels was 50 cents, with novels 13 through 28 at 60 cents each, and the final novels 29 through 32 costing 75 cents each. The spine of the books always included the title, and most times included the price and the trademark book symbol at the top. There were 4 Paperback Library books published outside the novel series. Barnabas Collins in a Funny Vein in 1969 for 50 cents. Barnabas Collins, A Personal Picture Album, also in 1969 for 50 cents. The Dark Shadows books of Vampires and Werewolves, 1970, 60 cents. And House of Dark Shadows, 1970, 75 cents. The middle 2 of these books follow the cover format of the novel series, but the first one, Funny Vein, is a sepia photo cover with no oval frame. The last, House of Dark Shadows, has the gold cover and oval photo, but the oval is smaller to accommodate the title and some graphics located outside and above it. Although this final book is technically a novel and is written by Ross, it is not usually included in the Ross series because it is a novelization of a previously created screenplay written by Sam Hall and Gordon Russell. The following is a book-by-book description of each cover photo and its origin in terms of the show. This includes storyline where applicable, as well as episodic placement. Number 1. Dark Shadows. First printing December 1966. Victoria Winters arrives at Collins' house, called Collinwood in later books, to serve as governess for David Collins, the son of Roger Collins. The mansion is also home to Roger's sister Elizabeth Collins Stoddard and her daughter Carolyn. Visiting the house is Roger and Elizabeth's cousin, Ernest Collins, who is grieving for his wife. In no time, Victoria finds herself falling in love with the melancholy Ernest, but soon she is the focus of a number of mysterious attacks and wonders just how Ernest became a widower. The first print run features this painted cover with a likeness of Victoria Winters against a background of dark sky, gnarled tree, and Collinwood in the distance. Subsequent printings feature a photo taken in 1968 of Barnabas and Vicky standing in the paneled office of Dr. Eric Lang with a chandelier above. They are shown above the waist. The shot was taken during rehearsal taping of episode 490 on May 6, 1968. The show aired on the 10th of May. The storyline for this episode involved events leading up to the experiment which gave life to Adam. Barnabas has told everyone that he is leaving Collinwood, and a cousin named Adam will take up residence at the old house. Hearing this, Vicky comes to Lang's lab to say goodbye. Number 2. Victoria Winters. First printing, March 1967. While violinist Ernest is away on tour, his mansion near Collinwood is rented to Elizabeth's college sweetheart, Henry Francis, and his 2 daughters. When cruel attacks on Victoria begin, she wonders if Francis might be a murderer. She wants to put her trust in the handsome artist Paul Kane, but fears he, too, is a suspect. The initial painting cover is a rendition of the famed 1966 publicity still of Vicky running away from the huge mansion of Collinwood wearing a trench coat. The painting depicts the scene at night. The later photo cover shows Victoria seated before the fireplace at Collinwood with Barnabas standing behind her. A lighted candelabra is on the mantel. This too is from episode 490. Number 3. Strangers at Collins' house. First printing September 1967. When Roger and Elizabeth's elderly Uncle Henry Collins arrives to spend the summer, Victoria thinks she may finally have a clue to her identity. Henry presents Victoria with jewels which once belonged to a woman she strongly resembles. Then Victoria becomes the target of a series of strange accidents that threaten her life. The original painted cover shows a concerned-looking Vicky looking over her shoulder, wearing a trench coat, as Collinwood looms high above her, and the title. The photo edition shows Vicky and Barnabas standing in Dr. Lang's office, once again episode 490, with Vicky wearing the brown blouse. Barnabas wears his gray suit and a red tie. Number 4. The Mystery of Collinwood. First printing January 1968. Roger and Elizabeth's brother Mark arrives at Collinwood under the alias Professor Mark Vino. A hypnotist, Mark wants his daughter Linda to marry Ernest and sees Victoria as a threat. Soon the legendary Phantom Mariner is seen haunting Collinwood, and Victoria finds herself once again threatened with death. Original painting shows yet another view of Victoria in the dimly lit foreground with the great house in the background. The photo cover shows Barnabas and Vicky in Lang's office once again, episode 490, with Vicky wearing a trench coat. And now here's a short clip from episode 490, which was taped on May 6, 1968, and aired on May 10th, 1968.
Hello, Barnabas. May I come in?
Yes, of course. What brings you here at this hour?
When I got your note yesterday, I thought you'd already left. But Mrs. Johnson just told me you were still here.
Yes, I was delayed. I planned to leave sometime tonight.
Why, Barnabas?
Well, I believe I explained it in the note.
No, you didn't. Your note was a little vague. And sad.
Sad.
Yes. I had the feeling that you were saying goodbye to me forever.
Oh, no, Vicky, that's not true, but...
What?
Well, it's just that I'm not sure when. I don't know whether you will understand this, but even though I'm gone, I want you to know that I will still be very close to you.
How is that possible?
Well, Vicky, you of all people should know that almost anything is possible.
Yes, but...
Of course, I will always be with you in spirit, but there is another way. It's just possible that you may feel my presence through my cousin.
The one that you mentioned in the note?
Yes, he's from England. He should be arriving within the next few days.
Won't he be very upset when he finds out that you've already left?
No, I wrote him and told him that it would be impossible for me to be here when he arrives, and I'm sure he'll understand. And I know that you and Cousin Elizabeth and the rest will be very kind to him.
Of course we will.
I'm sure that you will like him very much, Vicky.
Yes, I'm sure of that too.
As a matter of fact, he and I share a great deal in common, so I already know that he will become fond of you very quickly.
Barnabas, are you leaving because of me? Because I've hurt you?
Of course not, Vicky.
If you were, I'd never forgive myself.
Vicky, I've always known that I wouldn't be able to stay at Collinwood forever. You see, I have business interests in England, and I've left them, well, neglected far too long. It's as simple as that.
Barnabas, I'm so sorry. So sorry that I haven't been able to give you the same kind of love that you've given me.
Vicky, someday we will talk again, and I will tell you things I've never told anyone before. And you will know that it's just as well that you don't share my feelings now. You will know that loving me would have been the greatest mistake of your life. Well, there's going to be a storm. You'd better get back to Collinwood.
Goodbye, Barnabas.
Until we meet again.
Number 5, The Curse of Collinwood. First printing, May 1968. Following the shocking news that Ernest has been killed in a plane crash, Victoria fears that she is losing her mind as she begins to see zombies wandering the grounds of Collinwood. She turns her romantic attentions to Burke Devlin, a Collinsport resident with a mysterious past. This is the first cover which originally featured Barnabas on the cover, and the first which received no changes after the first print run. It is actually a synthesis of the first painted cover, showing Victoria with flowing hair, and a publicity photo of Barnabas taken in 1967, probably episode 276, tape date June 29th, 1967. The photo shows the vampire grasping his cane in his right hand and baring his fangs. This is also the last cover which depicts Victoria Winters. And here you see an original print from episode 276, which was a promotional shot that was used quite a bit, that had both black and white and color shots, and featured the blood red moon with the bat in it in the background. Number 6, Barnabas Collins. First printing, November 1968. Victoria happens across a mention of Barnabas Collins in an old family journal, prompting her to ask Elizabeth what she knows about her ancestor. This provides a setting for a flashback to 1899, when Elizabeth's grandmother, Margaret, was the matron of Collinwood and was first visited by the mysterious cousin from England, tainted with a vampire curse. Despite all the trouble of changing covers to include photos of Barnabas, this is actually the first novel in which he appears. The cover features that 1967-68 publicity shot from episode 276 of Barnabas pulling his collar across the bottom half of his face. This one is in lurid color. Number 7. The Secret of Barnabas Collins. First printing January 1969. Barnabas Collins arrives in present-day Collinsport and moves into the old house. He recalls his past in a flashback to the story of Lady Claire Duncan, who wanted to marry him in the 1800s and followed him to the United States, where tragedy and the shocking truth about Barnabas greeted her. This photo cover shows a craggy-faced Barnabas, his face twisted in concern. The background shows us that this shot was taken on the set of Tom Jennings' lair. Barnabas is resting his head on Tom's coffin. This shot was taken in episode 570, just before Barnabas battles Tom. The shot was taken on the 23rd of August, 1968. The show itself aired August 30th. Number 8. The Demon of Barnabas Collins. First printing April 1969. A movie company arrives at Collinwood, and its star Rita Glenn falls in love with Barnabas. She introduces him to a doctor who temporarily cures his vampire affliction. However, he soon finds himself in battle with an evil vampire, fighting for his life as well as Rita's, and forcing him back to his bloodlust. Another shot from episode 570. This one shows Barnabas contemplating the hammer and stake he holds just seconds before he is attacked by Tom Jennings. And here's a clip from episode 570.
Barnabas, it's not light yet. Be quiet. Barnabas, we're taking an awful chance. Empty. Barnabas is gonna come back any minute. We gotta get out of here. I ain't staying here.
Willie!
I ain't staying.
You.
And here we have some unused Paperback Library photography provided by Nick Caputo, who's a Dark Shadows fan. And these are lovely shots. You can see a lot of the sort of technique and technical aspects. You can see the light above them and so on. And you can see a little bit below the edge of the coffin and so on and so forth. But these are great photos, but they chose not to use them and instead used photographs just of Barnabas. Now, we're about to see two photographs that came from earlier in episode 570, as these are the climactic scenes. This scene here is the beginning of the scene in which Barnabas comes to the crypt to rescue Julia before he is going to deal with Tom Jennings a little bit later on. So what I like to do now is just show you a little chunk of that scene from episode 570.
Julia. Julia! Julia!
And before we go any further, I'd just like to give a little plug for Nick Caputo's blog. It's called Marvel Mysteries and Comics Minutae. Again, the address will be in the description of this particular episode. It is Nick, Nick-Caputo, Caputo.blogspot.com. Also, we'll be seeing a few more contributions that Nick gave in terms of these photographs that weren't used on the Paperback Library covers in upcoming segments. Number 9, The Foe of Barnabas Collins. First printing July 1969. While exploring the Collinwood attic, Victoria discovers a sketch done by Barnabas Collins in 1910. This triggers a flashback to the story of Paula Collins Jennings and her husband, Christopher, a werewolf. As Paula's life is threatened, Barnabas comes to her aid, but then must face the reincarnation of Angelique, the witch who plagued him with a vampire curse. This photo of the grinning fanged Barnabas was taken sometime during the winter of 1967-68 as part of publicity for the show's 1795 storyline. There are several of these types of shots in the series of books, and all were taken at this time. Now, it was thought that these were taken at Lyndhurst or maybe the Spratt House or somewhere on the Lyndhurst estate at one time, but I've come to believe that they were actually taken at a place called Carroll Cliff Castle, which is now known as Castle Hotel and Spa. It's a luxury hotel near New York City. It's actually in Terrytown, New York. Some of the Carroll Cliff photo shoot exists in sources like this Saturday Evening Post article from December of 1968, Can the 172-year-old vampire find love and happiness in a typical New England town? Here are a few other shots from that Carroll Cliff photo shoot. This one's fairly familiar, and actually a similar one is on the cover of one of the books. And here, this one was used on the back of the Dark Shadows Companion. And speak of the devil, here's an expanded version of the photo that we just saw from that Carroll Cliff photo shoot. This is number 10, The Phantom and Barnabas Collins, first printing September 1969. Exploring the cemetery with Barnabas, Maggie Evans faints and awakens in 1880. She becomes the victim of Dr. Giles Collins, whose experiments have claimed several lives. After a nightmarish adventure, Maggie awakens in present time with only vague memories of her experience. This is an interior photo of the 1795 Barnabas. The same photo was also used on the cover of the 1995 Dark Shadows Almanac. This was taken at Carroll Cliff in 1967-1968 as one of the 1795 promotional photo shoots. It shows Barnabas with his cane at the head of a large table in 18th century dress. Number 11, Barnabas Collins versus the Warlock, first printing October 1969. David and his playmate, Amy Jennings, nearly lure Maggie to her death in the swamp on the Collins estate. In the nick of time, Barnabas arrives to pluck her from the quicksand, and together they try to determine what is behind the children's strange behavior. This is another 1967-68 promotional shot. This one shows Barnabas hunched over and glaring past his upheld cane, 18th century dress. This could have been taken of one of two locations in my estimation. One would be Carroll Cliff. It's an exterior shot. You can see some snow in the background there. Or it could have been taken on the Lyndhurst estate or nearby on the Spratt House property, which is the old house. And it's number 12, The Peril of Barnabas Collins, first printing November 1969. In Queen Victoria's London, Barnabas meets Diana Hastings, who is inspired to try to end his curse. Together they travel to Collinwood, where an evil doctor promises to cure Barnabas, but ends up threatening his life as well as Diana's. This photo cover shows characters from 1897. This is also the first cover with Quentin's likeness, even though the book does not involve him. The shot is of four men on the Great Staircase, Barnabas, Edward, Quentin, as well as Charles Delaware Tate. This photo is similar to Philly Gum Giant pinup number 7 and was taken at the same time. All of the photo covers involving 1897 were taken during episode 804, taped on July 16, 1969, and aired on July 24th. The storyline of this episode involves the possessed Jameson Collins wreaking havoc on the Collins family by affecting the minds of Edward and Charity Trask, while Barnabas and Quentin plot to stop the Pitofi-controlled boy. And here also from episode 804, is The Men of Collinwood, which is the 7th of 16 giant pinups produced by Philly Gum Company back in 1969. Number 13, Barnabas Collins and the Mysterious Ghost. First printing, January 1970. A ballet troupe holds a summer stock performance at a deserted chapel on the Collins estate. The star ballerina is found murdered, and her replacement, Diana Sampson, juggles a love affair with Barnabas and the threat of her own murder. An 1897 photo featuring Barnabas and Quentin in Quentin's room. This picture again belies the book's contents, as Quentin does not play a part in this one either, but this is from episode 804. Number 14, Barnabas Collins and Quentin's Demon. First printing, February 1970. In 1895, Quentin Collins is so haunted by the recording of a waltz that he seeks out its composer. A romance ensues between Quentin and Lara Balfour, the composer's daughter. She is attracted to Quentin, but becomes frightened when she learns that his first wife was brutally murdered, and the killer was never found. Shown in this reverse image photo are the 1897 Collins brothers, Edward, Barnabas, and Quentin. Charity Trask joins them on the staircase, dressed as the slattern Pansy Faye. Once again from episode 804, and here's a scene from 804.
Yes, sir, I'm going to enjoy doing your portrait.
The fact is, I don't want a portrait done of me. Now, perhaps Grandmother did, but she's dead, so I see no reason for you to do it.
There is. I accepted the commission. I took money for it. You know, there are quite a few people, Mr. Collins, who would enjoy having me do their portrait.
Oh. Well, paint them, not me.
But perhaps you'll change your mind after you see the portrait. Now, I'll be staying...
I'm not going to change my mind. Suppose you move on your way.
Look, Mr. Collins,
Right now. Good evening, Mr. Tate. I do appreciate the honor.
I'm gonna dance for you, gonna dance your cares away. I'll do the hoochie coo and ta-ra-ra-boom-dee-ay. I'll sing a happy song while I dance the whole night long. When the music begins,
Charity, what in the world is wrong with you?
Didn't like me before, did you, love? How about now? Maybe I'm no lady, but I got other virtues.
Number 15, Barnabas Collins and the Gypsy Witch. First printing, March 1970. Carolyn and Maggie discover a cameo engraved From Barnabas to Roxana, 1895. When they press Elizabeth for details about Roxana Collins, she tells them the story of another young woman Barnabas romanced. Despite a warning from a gypsy witch, Roxana became involved with Barnabas, who ended up the main suspect in the murder of her brother and father. This handsome solo shot of Barnabas in his gray frock was taken in the foyer of Collinwood under the balcony rail, episode 804, during 1897. Number 16, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Mummy's Cursed. First printing, April 1970. Professor Anthony Collins brings a collection of Egyptian relics to Collinwood, including the mummy of King Rahotep, who died more than 2,000 years earlier. When a young woman is found murdered, Maggie suspects that the mummy has been brought back to life. Professor Collins threatens her into silence, and she fearfully waits for the murderer to strike again. This is yet another 1897 shot taken in Quentin's bedroom, with Barnabas and Quentin talking just before the possessed Jameson arrives in episode 804. And now, here's a scene from episode 804.
Barnabas? Barnabas?
I am here, Quentin.
Did you send for the child?
Just as you told me. He should be here very soon.
Good.
It's difficult to think of him as a child.
We must not lose sight of the fact that the mind is possessed by Count Petofi. We must find a way to get that captive mind and return the body to its rightful owner. And we must act quickly before everything is changed irrevocably.
If only we can.
Who is this?
Don't you recognize?
She seems familiar.
It's Jenny. Just before I married her.
She was very beautiful.
Yes, she was. I went to my son's grave yesterday. In the woods near Saunders.
He was buried in the woods.
Yes.
With the pentagram.
Yes. For all the good it'll do him now. Then I came home, looked for this photograph. My little girl, she looks like her mother.
He's here.
Come in.
You wanted to see me, Quentin?
Yes.
We both wanted to see you, Jameson.
Cousin Barnabas.
Did you miss me?
Oh, yes, I did.
I missed you, too. Now listen to what I'm going to tell you. We all love you a great deal. Whatever must be done, we will do it. But you must fight, too, Jameson.
Oh, Mr. Collins, aren't you taking a great risk being here now? Even though you have talents of appearing and disappearing at will.
I had to be here, didn't I? To meet you, Count Petofi.
Oh, another realist. Oh, that does please me.
Number 17, Barnabas Quentin and the Avenging Ghost. First printing, May 1970. Carolyn's friend Celia Dalton visits Collinwood with her family and promptly begins suffering fainting spells, during which others are violently attacked. Carolyn wonders if her friend may be possessed by the spirit of a murderer who recently cursed the Collins family before committing suicide. This photo of Barnabas and Quentin can be placed during the Leviathan period, specifically the episode in which Grant Douglas, Quentin, is run down by a car driven by the indoctrinated Barnabas. Barnabas's distinctive striped tie and Quentin's trench coat are the tip-offs. This takes place during episode 904, taped on November 25th, 1970, and aired on December 12th, 1970. The photo is a reverse image. And now, a scene from 904.
The man walked in front of me. I had no warning. I couldn't see him until it was too late.
You'd better see him. He's alive. Oh, my God. Barnabas, that's the man who was coming to meet me.
Here we have two more unused photos from episode 904, provided by Nick Caputo again. The first one is an actual scene, and the second one is contrived with the addition of Quentin. And now, here's the earlier scene from episode 904.
Barnabas, when you told me that I would meet someone, and meet him unexpectedly, and really find out what love was, I must admit I thought it was a very pleasant but improbable prediction. You do remember telling me that, don't you?
Yes, I do. I told you, and I meant it.
Well, then why are you surprised?
I suppose I didn't expect it to happen quite so quickly.
Oh, that's just the point, Barnabas. something did happen. Something real and tangible did happen. When that bell tinkled and I looked up into the face of a man I'd never seen before.
You mean he was as taken with you as you were with him?
I don't know, but he was interested enough to ask if he could come back here this evening.
When?
He's coming here at 10 tonight.
I see. Well, let's hope that the young man doesn't disappoint you on his second visit.
Let's hope not.
Number 18, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Nightmare Assassin. First printing, June 1970. After being knocked unconscious in an auto accident, Carolyn wakes up in 1870 and meets Barnabas and Quentin. Suffering under the curse of the werewolf, Quentin arranges to be assassinated, but later changes his mind. His change of heart may have come too late, though, as the assassin may be unstoppable. Carolyn loses consciousness at the end of the story and ends up back in 1970 with no memory of her adventures in the past. Back to 1897 with this low-angle shot of the Collins brothers, and it's unique in the series. It is the only shot in which the stage lights are reflected in the picture. The shot looks as if it were taken on the staircase, episode 804. Number 19, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Crystal Coffin. First printing, July 1970. Betty Ward arrives at Collinwood and finds her twin sister lying dead in a crystal coffin. Suspecting foul play, she seeks help from Barnabas, despite rumors that he is a vampire. This publicity shot was taken on the set of the Old House basement during Parallel Time 1970. The photo depicts Barnabas and Quentin as Barnabas gestures towards the camera as if revealing some new mystery at Collinwood. Barnabas's vampiric gray hair, deep blue tie, and Inverness, coupled with Quentin's double-breasted blazer with gold buttons, date this shot at episode 981. This is the episode in which Barnabas arrives in Parallel Time. In actuality, he and Quentin don't appear together in the show, but the costumes fully jibed only on that day, and the basement set was available for posed shots. 981 was taped March 5th, 1970, with an air date set at March 30th. This composition is a reverse image. And here is a related scene from episode 981.
It's me, isn't it? I'm the reason why you're wondering about going back. Well, I'm not as inefficient as I look. I'll be very good at managing a house.
You don't have to worry about that. Miss Hoffman's very good at that.
Oh. Then what is it? Oh, Quentin, please love me.
I do love you, Maggie. I do.
I know you do.
You must never forget that. Never, ever forget.
Quint, if you don't want to go to Collinwood tonight, then we can stay here in Boston and go to that concert, and then tomorrow...
No. We leave tonight.
How did you even know this room was here?
Didn't you?
No.
Then the chances are your husband won't either.
I know he doesn't.
Good. Then this will be the room. We must find a coffin.
Barnabas, why don't you tell me?
Why know so much? Can you imagine another band of time running parallel to your own? We live in them both, but they're different because we have made different choices. You see, I came to this time hoping desperately to escape what I am, and I failed.
What choice did I ever have?
In that time, you are heiress to Collinwood.
Oh, I should like that time.
No, you wouldn't. Because today, you see, your husband was killed.
Well? Maybe I would mind that less than you think.
Not Will. The man's name is Jeb Hawks.
But I know no one by that name. I don't understand it.
In the time I come from, Julia Hoffman is a doctor.
Perhaps she's happier then.
Maybe she was. But how did she happen to come to Collinwood?
With Angelica, of course.
They were friends.
It was hard to tell who was in charge of the other.
Number 20, Barnabas Quentin and the Witch's Curse. First printing, August 1970. Anita Burgess accompanies her brother Jeff to Collinwood as he seeks revenge against Quentin for the death of his best friend. The Burgesses learn that Quentin has established a coven at Collinwood, and they enlist Barnabas to aid in destroying it. This shot on this cover is another PT 1970 shot from episode 981. It is Barnabas and Quentin once again, this time on the set of Quentin's honeymoon suite near a balcony. This area was the scene of Quentin and Maggie's first night together in parallel time, as seen in the previous scene. The pair stand with arms at their sides, looking benignly toward the camera. Number 21, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Haunted Cave. First printing, September 1970. Trying to recover from the shock of the murder of her husband, Harriet Turnbridge turns to Barnabas. When both her brother-in-law and father-in-law are later found dead with their throats ripped open, Barnabas suspects Quentin, the werewolf, is to blame. Another parallel time 1970 scene for this Barnabas Quentin pose, and this is the old house basement once again. The clothing here is the same as number 19 and number 20. Barnabas stares off as Quentin looks at him. Another setup from episode 981. Number 22, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Frightened Bride. First printing, October 1970. A newspaper reporter from Ellsworth, Antarctica, visits Collinwood seeking information about Anne Hayward, a World War I nurse who had stayed at Collinwood. This leads to a flashback, 1920, when Anne and her husband John shared a haunted honeymoon at Collinwood. This photo returns us to episode 804 and 1897. The scene is Quentin's room, where he and Barnabas confront the possessed by Pitofi, Jameson. This scene can be seen in an earlier video clip in this episode. Number 23, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Scorpio Curse. First printing, November 1970. Barnabas and Diana Collins, patients at the same sanitarium, become suspects when other patients are stabbed to death and marked with the sign of the scorpion, the zodiac symbol of death. Diana is thought to be insane when she insists she has seen a werewolf stalking the grounds. This shot occurs in the first scene of episode 804, where Quentin and Charity appear in the drawing room at Collinwood. Here they discuss the awful events leading up to Edward's dementia of servitude. This photo also includes a nice shot of the drawing room chandelier. Reverse image. Number 24, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Serpent. First printing, December 1970. Following the Civil War, archaeologist Gerald Collins and his daughter Irma settle at Collinwood, bringing with them an odd collection of rare animals, including, it is rumored, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of Aztec legend. When a murder is committed, Irma asks Barnabas to help her discover if her father has unleashed a monster onto Collinsport. Publishers and/or art directors at Paperback Library took to the 1897 look like ducks to water as they used shots from episode 804 on no less than 13 covers in the 32-book series. Here's another one, this time another posed staircase shot with Barnabas in the front and Edward and Charles Tate in the background on an upper level. Number 25, Barnabas, Quentin, and the Magic Potion. First printing, January 1971. Carolyn becomes marked for murder when the owner of an antique shop where she works discovers what he believes is a serum providing eternal youth. After his daughter tries the serum and dies, her ghost haunts Carolyn. Barnabas insists that Carolyn stay on the job long enough to gather evidence that her boss is a murderer. Here we have a nice solo shot of 1897 Barnabas seated on the unique red love seat in the drawing room. It's a reverse image, and it may or may not be from episode 804. Number 26, Barnabas Quentin and the Body Snatchers. First printing, February 1971. An alien spaceship lands in Collinsport, and its occupants kidnap Roger and scientist Murdoch Gray. Two of the aliens disguise themselves as the men and take their places. Barnabas, Quentin, and Carolyn work together to expose the aliens' plot. And this is the only novel in the series with a science fiction tone, and the only one written in the omniscient point of view. A threatening, fanged Barnabas appears in this shot that returns us to the earlier 1795 type photos. It's taken somewhere on the Lyndhurst estate or in Terrytown, perhaps at Carroll Cliff, perhaps at Lyndhurst itself, and perhaps at Spratt House, the old house. Number 27, Barnabas Quentin and Dr. Jekyll's Son. First printing, April 1971. And this will be the last printing that happened during the actual broadcast of the show. Visiting Collinwood in 1908 with Barnabas is Dr. Henry Jekyll, son of the notorious English murderer. The beautiful Emily Collins is torn between Barnabas and Dr. Jekyll, but wonders if one is a violent killer. Episode 804 is the source of this scene, which shows Barnabas about to spirit the possessed Jameson away from Collinwood in 1897. And let's have a look at that scene now.
Servant. Beth Chavez, in bondage to the vampire, waiting to hear him call her. Gregory Trask, Magda Rocosi, Evan Hanley, Charity Trask, Slattern, who wants to sing and dance and show a painted face to the world. Oh, a fine lot, all of you. Mr. Collins.
You will come with me. No noise, no protest.
No!
I said no noise.
Number 28, Barnabas Quentin and the Grave Robbers. First printing, June 1971. In 1830, Englishwoman Paula Sullivan is waiting for Barnabas to propose marriage, but evil Dr. Nicholas Bentley beats him to the punch. Disgusted by Bentley's patronage of grave robbers, Paula refuses the doctor. His revenge follows her to Collinwood and may cost her her life. This photo is a return to the time period of cover number 17, The Time of the Leviathans, 1970. The scene is from episode 904 and shows a shot of Barnabas and Quentin in the same costumes as paperback number 17, but from a side angle. Like 17, this is a reverse image. Number 29, Barnabas Quentin and the Sea Ghost. First printing, August 1971. Nora Bliss and her father, both salvage experts, attempt to recover a sunken treasure in Collinsport Cove. Nora, however, becomes the victim of an ancient curse and thinks she will die at the hands of a pirate ghost if Barnabas can't intervene. This is another shot taken probably at Carroll Cliff Estate in the winter of 67-68. This shows Barnabas Collins leaning against an arch with his fangs showing. He holds the wolf's head cane and wears the long cape of 1795. And for those of you who are curious, this is what Carroll Cliff is known by now. It's called Castle Hotel and Spa, luxury hotel near NYC. The address is right there, as you can see, and you can just punch that in if you're interested in maybe hanging out there, maybe making a reservation or something. I'm not sure how much it costs. It's probably reasonably expensive, but there you go, just in case. Number 30, Barnabas Quentin and the Mad Magician. First printing, October 1971. Carolyn and a friend, Beth Mayberry, are working for a world-famous illusionist during his Collinsport appearance when Beth suddenly dies. Carolyn grows suspicious of the magician of murdering her friend, but when the body count grows, the residents of Collinsport blame Barnabas and Quentin. This shot is an outstanding solo of Quentin, most likely from episode 804, probably in his room. He stands in the classic frock coat, staring pensively off to the side of the camera. This is a reverse image. Number 31, Barnabas Quentin and the Hidden Tomb. First printing, December 1971. Set in the Civil War era, this edition tells the story of Ellen Drury, who falls in love with Barnabas after becoming engaged to an evil vampire, the twin brother of the man she originally planned to marry. In this shot, Barnabas contemplates parallel time that shows him in Angelique's room on his first day in PT 1970. He holds a photo frame, a picture of Quentin and David, and stares off. This is episode 981. And now let's see a scene from that episode.
Why do I feel I belong in that other time? Is it because of this? Because my life was so different in that time?
Barnabas, please, I must talk to you.
Julia. She shouldn't have followed me. Julia, go back. It's happened. It's happened. Julia!
Barnabas.
Julia, can you hear me?
Yes, Barnabas,
Julia, can you hear me?
You can't hear me. He's in that room, and he can't hear me. He may be trapped in there forever.
How did it happen? Why did this room suddenly appear? What am I going to do now?
Who are you? And what are you doing in this room?
Here's another one of Nick Caputo's great shots from Paperback Library photography that wasn't used, but clearly was probably one of the finalists perhaps for the previous paperback cover. And we can see that in this one it's also from episode 981. Number 32, Barnabas Quentin and the Vampire Beauty, the final book in the 32 consecutive paperbacks by Marilyn Ross. First printing, March 1972. Model Adele Marriott thinks she is undergoing a surgical procedure to make her eternally thin. She doesn't realize the procedure will leave her not only thin, but a vampire as well. Horrified by her new condition, she flees to Collinsport seeking the one man who can help her, Barnabas Collins. This final book sports an interesting cover with Barnabas in his 1897 costume sitting next to Nancy Barrett in street clothes. This is possibly from episode 804, but it is difficult to be sure. And now here's some of the fun stuff that Paperback Library produced outside of the normal novelization series. First, we'll have Barnabas Collins in a Funny Vein, which was first published in February of 1969. The book contains hundreds of so-called jokes about vampires. Typical fare, Barnabas says, "I get embarrassed when people see my fangs and tell me it's impolite to point." And what does Barnabas do in the swimming pool? He does the dead man's float. And then he shows you how to do it the easy way. Anyway, so it was all fun and games when you were a kid in grade school, at any rate. The photo cover of this silly little book is the famous 1967 shot of Barnabas, also found on the #1 pink gum card. It is from a photo shoot that was done sometime during the shooting of episode 2 1976. With a bat in the background, the vampire grins with fangs, framing his face with a wolf's head cane. This is the only Paperback Library edition of a Dark Shadows book which does not have the gold cover and oval picture design. And as if to reward our previous suffering, in December of 1969, Paperback Library produced Barnabas Collins, A Personal Picture Album. Compiled by Jonathan Frid, this book features photos and personal commentary chronicling Jonathan's life and career, from his childhood in Canada through his fame on Dark Shadows. The cover shot here was probably taken in early 1969 and shows Barnabas in a black wool coat and red paisley muffler, holding a large book, presumably the Collins family history. This matches the outfit in green gum card number 6 and the MPI video The Best of Barnabas as well. This shot was taken on location at Trinity Church in New York City. The back cover also sports an excellent photograph with a facsimile autograph of Jonathan Frid, and the picture is from episode 522, which was taped on the 16th of June, 1968, and aired on the 26th of June, 1968. And here we have the Dark Shadows Book of Vampires and Werewolves, which was published first in August of 1970. Subtitled Horror Tales selected by Barnabas and Quentin Collins, this volume contains a collection of supernatural short stories with no connection to Dark Shadows by various writers. The photo cover depicts another angle of the PT 1970 shot found on Book 19, Barnabas Quentin and the Crystal Coffin. The differences in this old house basement shot is that it has been developed in a natural view instead of reversed, and Barnabas's focus, as he points off camera, is on Quentin rather than ahead of himself. This is all from episode 981. Although not a Ross book, this cover still displays the signature gold cover with oval-shaped picture. And finally, we have the novelization of House of Dark Shadows from October 1970. This novelization of the film follows the original shooting script closely, including a few scenes which ended up on the cutting room floor. The story does not fit into the continuity of other paperbacks or the TV show. By the end, a number of main characters are killed, and even Barnabas ends up with a stake through his heart. The shot of this bulk of the cast, cavorting in character on the lawn of Lyndhurst, is the same as the MGM A-style poster for the promotion of the movie. This book cover features the same gold cover as the other Ross books, but the picture is in a shortened oval to facilitate the use of a Collinwood graphic and movie title above the photo. I think seeing these photos provided by Nick Caputo bears repeating. These first two are from 904, and then we have one from 981, and then we have one from 570, one from 804, and then a whole series more from 570. And you can see these are really, really cool photos. Haven't really been seen much before, and I appreciate Nick's generosity in sharing them with me. And with his kind permission, I will now share them with you. Well, I got to tell you, Mr. Mann, that was quite some mouthful and handful, all 32 of the Marilyn Ross novels, plus 4 additional books, all published by Paperback Library back in the day between 1966 and 1972, when the last of the Ross novels was published. At any rate, you may have noticed, if you own any of these books, that the later ones are harder to come by. Probably the last 6 or 8 of them in particular only had like 1 printing, maybe 2. The last several, I know for a fact, only had 1 printing, which is why Barnabas Quentin and the Vampire Beauty can command anything from $50 to $125, depending on its condition and depending on who wants it and how bad they want it on eBay or elsewhere. So these are still sought after, obviously, by Dark Shadows fans, those of us who are hardcore and still collecting after all these years. And I applaud all of you who are, and I applaud all of you that have helped me collect over the years. A number of eBay sellers, Jeff Kenny in particular, has gotten me some really, really nice stuff that he's sold to me. So I appreciate that very much. Also want to say I appreciate Nick Caputo's input for this particular episode. He generously furnished, I guess it was about 10 pictures. I don't think anybody's, or not too many people have seen them before, that were taken by the Paperback Library photographer, including one that was taken during episode 804. And there were many more that were taken. Several of them made covers, of course, and we talked about that during the rundown. That was the same day that there had to have been a Philadelphia Chewing Gum Company photographer on site too, because the Dark Shadows Giant pinups contained several photo shots from episode 804 too. So I thought that was kind of fun. Hopefully they weren't elbowing each other or anything, that they were cooperating and having a good time. It looks like they were, because several of the photos were almost the same configuration and with the same characters and actors in the shot. So that was kind of fun. Anyway, I'll have Nick's blog, Addy, in the descriptions. And I'd also like to thank Danielle, aka Penny Dreadful at Terror at Collinwood, for being supportive, and also Christina and Cara at Between the Shadows, who I had a chance to meet in a Zoom call last week, and that was very much a fun thing, and it was great meeting you guys. Jule was there from resident of Collinwood, and Patrick McCray from Everywhere was also there, and we had a nice time. I thought it was very interesting. That's all my thanks, I guess, for now. I'm sure there are plenty of other people I should be thanking at this moment for their help and patience. It's been a while since I've done an episode. This is episode 5. I was embroiled in a lot of busyness for about 2.5 months. So that's why you didn't hear from me. I'm hoping that you're patient and hanging in there. And again, much thanks. And I hope that you enjoyed this foray into the details and minutiae of the Paperback Library books. Once again, I have to thank the late, great Craig Hamrick and his collectibles book supplied a great deal of valuable information. The Ann Wilson episode guide was very helpful as well. Now, these are, I believe, out of print, but on eBay, you can usually find a copy here and there if you're interested in doing that. I think that's going to be it for today. And please, if you like what you see and hear, if you would subscribe, that would be lovely. Let's support each other in Dark Shadows fandom. And now from the Collinsport Inn in the Chris Jennings Memorial Hotel room, this is your friend Alan Gallant wearing his B for Barnabas hat, signing off.